We had a friend. He went through a miscarriage with his wife as well. And he's a pretty prophetic guy. And he said, I came home and my wife was bleeding out on the floor. And I went to a hotel after like the next day or 2 days later. And I said to the Lord, you're going to need to talk to me immediately. It was like the voice of Jesus. And he said, I can tell you why this happened, but why won't heal the pain? Do you want to talk?
Wow.
The why isn't it. And a lot of us try to start with like getting our whys answered. And the reality is that beauty and goodness, it's a higher understanding.
Hey, everyone. Welcome again to another Supernatural Leadership Podcast episode. My name is Sean Gaby. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let me just say it's been a little while. In fact, it's probably the first time since the beginning of this podcast that we did not hit the first Wednesday of every month. It was a crazy last several months and lots to get into, but we're back and it's all good. And we're excited to bring better, more powerful leadership content your way. And we're kind of restarting again today with another amazing conversation with an amazing friend of mine, someone that I've known for several years now. I don't know, probably a decade at least. And him and his wife, Tommy and Chrissy Green, they're incredible people. They're incredible family-oriented people doing amazing things based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And they have 4 amazing kids. And just to give you a little bit of a sort of a biography of who Tommy is, and before we get into our conversation, he's a man of many colors, a man of many things. And many of you would have already maybe heard my first chat with him on this podcast several years ago. And we really dove into his influence in the music industry, specifically in context to his previous band called Sleeping Giant. He was the former frontman of a band called Sleeping Giant for 12 years, 5 albums, hundreds of shows. But he's also more than that. And he's the founder of Run Against Traffic, which is they support counter trafficking and aftercare. That was started in 2018. Also, he's been known to be a church planter, and so many amazing things have come out of that as well. He started into real estate, has a real estate business as well since 2014. Lead actor actually in a feature film yet to arrive in theaters called Dark Arrows, written and directed by a mutual friend of ours, Eric Gregson. And also the thing that we're going to touch a little bit on today actually is his new band, brand new band, HolyName. And it was started in 2020. I guess it was started really in the middle of the pandemic. And really it's a collective of metalheads that are all in relationship together. And they did their first live show, I believe, this year. If I was to describe this band, and Tommy will correct me if this is a correct or a wrong definition or description of his band, is like this worship hardcore metal band. Not that like other metal is not worship, but there's just something different about this band from my perspective. I mean, I believe, if you're a believer and you're doing anything, it's a form of worship. But when I say worship, most people would think like Hillsong or Elevation or Bethel or all these, worship environments or cultures. Well, I kind of think that HolyName represents a new breed of metal-oriented worship, like underground, hardcore worship. Now, Tommy can correct me, but without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. Tommy, welcome to another episode of this Supernatural Leadership Podcast. I love you, man. What's up? What's going on?
No, you're great. That was great. I mean, really, we are literally the biggest deal you've ever heard ever in your life. So I really appreciate that intro.
No, you are a big deal,
awesome.
Man. I mean, let me just say this: like, you were primarily a screamer in Sleeping Giant.
Yes, sir.
By the way, that like for all those listening out there, like the majority of only what I listen to when I work out is this kind of music. Like I need something aggressive. I don't listen to, not that I don't love like typical like Sunday morning worship, but I'm just letting you know, like my worship in the gym is I'm listening to this kind of music. I need some sort of aggressive music like this. And so, but Tommy, you screamed primarily on your last band. This band, you're like only singing. Yeah. And other people are doing the hard work for you, screaming. So
that's true. That's
so what's up? True. What's up with that? Tell me
I
about
just
that.
don't, I didn't want to do it. I'm not talented enough vocally to fluctuate between yelling and then singing well. And so if I'm really honest, the subject matter and the style of HolyName was like, it feels quite personal. And so I knew I wanted to sing, and I knew that I wanted to sing over really beautiful and aggressive sounding stuff. And
Wow.
then, but the music itself, it dictated at certain points, someone needed to really be going in. And so I just called friends of mine that were amazing yellers and said, would you sing on a song with me? And so you're exactly right. Whenever the hard work needs to be done, I have them do that. And then I get to just kind of stand and try to kind of hold it together. And then I get to
Wow.
sing, which is cool.
So my perspective, like,
Okay.
and I would say like if listening to you, Sleeping Giant, the way it was when you were in Sleeping Giant, like I would say that was worship to me too. Like I believe, like I said earlier, like I don't want to get into semantics, but like anything that a believer puts their hands to should be an expression of worship, right?
Yeah.
We kind of have this pigeonhole idea of what worship really is. It's like the
Wow.
CCM, it's the
Sure.
contemporary worship movement. You know, like there's more. It's beyond that. You know, it's
Yeah.
not just a typical Sunday. You go to a typical church. That's not like just the only kind of worship out there, right? Like
Um,
stylistically, I mean, we know this. I mean, it could be jazz, it could be Latin, it could be gospel, it could be there's so many, but I think hardcore and metal has been left out of that camp for a long time. And you probably would be, you probably would agree with this. But how would you like I would look at your lyrics in HolyName and compare them to Sleeping Giant, and it looks and sounds different to me.
yeah.
What would you say is different from your perspective, being the guy, like being in the band? Like, what's different about Sleeping Giant and HolyName? And what's the why behind HolyName?
There you go. That's a really good question, Sean. With Sleeping Giant, I think we really were trying to break some ground in that we many years ago when I came to Kingdom Culture, when you were at the old building and we did the Daniels School,
Yeah.
I remember talking about um, high culture, pop culture, folk culture,
Good
and
memory, man. Good
yeah,
memory.
folk culture. Remember we talked about like how folk culture seems to impact pop culture 20 years later. And one of the bands that I brought up back then was a band that was it were a street band from Baltimore, and they had been featured in GQ. And I said, now hardcore bands are starting to show up on mainstream stages. And that band was called Turnstile. And Turnstile just did a Taco Bell commercial. They just played Coachella. Like they're like a mainstream, humongous band. They put out an incredible record called Glow On in the last year, and it's like huge.
Wow.
And they're just a hardcore band from Baltimore. So within the hardcore scene, it's sort of the tip of the spear. It's a street style music, it's an underground culture, but it's also innately prophetic in that the prophetic looks at, in many ways, the mass of what's being offered, stands back and then says, no, I'm going to offer something different. There's something inherently prophetic about
Wow.
subcultures, whether that's music, whether that's art, whether that's even theology. There can be very folk, fringe prophetic movements,
Yeah.
and we want to destroy them. But like we said before, folk culture is 100% belief. It's indestructible. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
folk culture will make room. We're seeing that now, even in the theological space around political movements and the LGBTQ. I mean, that has been a culture that's been around for a while. And
Right.
I think because there's this core belief, it's made its way into the mainstream. That's a folk culture as well.
Wow.
And it's indestructible. It's 100% belief. And so within our movement, Sleeping Giant, we were hardcore kids, but we had this. You phrased it really well. We really believed, and Eric and me have been best friends since I think we were 18, and we would go back and forth. We were a big part of each other's journey as Christians. And he wrote a song on his old band CD. He was in a band called Death Star, and they wrote a song called "The Great Opiate." and it was about music, and that music belonged to God. And these are like overflows of these conversations that like everything we do, it's already his. It's sacramental in that God takes creation and we give creation back to him. And in that exchange, there's all these things that happen. And so we were very intentional about taking very elementary, rough sounding music, but for us, it was high praise. We were really trying to like take our culture, and instead of just doing a CCM version of metal, we were really trying to break into atmosphere. We were really after creating an environment where we felt the verses that God is enthroned upon, the praises. And so we really wanted to create a space where like Jesus would just be with us. And in that he could do stuff, and then people would have their own encounter. And then for me, Sleeping Giant was a vehicle to preach. That's what that was for me. For everyone else.
And you did that. I mean, you baptized kids on stage. I mean, you moved
all
in
the
the word of
time.
knowledge.
Every
you
show
prophesied. I mean, you did all that.
Every show, it was for me and Chrissy Green. We were a team, and she sent me out, and we went together to do ministry. So Sleeping Giant was like a ministry band. I preached every single show. Every single show was about presenting our music and establishing that we knew the world and people could see that we were real. But then it was a vehicle to literally share the message and do the thing. That was awesome. SG. It was like a ministry band.
Yeah. SG, Sean Gaby.
Sean Gaby. That's right. Sean Gaby, Kingdom Day. So,
Sleeping Giant.
Yeah. So HolyName is different in that, I got, if I could just, and as a friend, you were there, you gave me and Chrissy a really profound word of encouragement, 2019. But HolyName was the process of me kind of getting my heart broken in my own culture and understanding of Christianity, grieving the death and loss of multiple people in my life, and then discovering or rediscovering things about Christ that were profound and allowed me to keep my faith. And so
that was on the cusp of moving into a pandemic. Was that early 2019 or?
Yeah, 2018 in May, my little brother died really suddenly, and then me and Chrissy had a miscarriage a month later. And then within a few months after that, we got pregnant again with our son, and we lost him at 18 weeks. And then Chrissy's mom got really, really sick, and she passed away. And then we got pregnant again with a little girl and lost her at 16 weeks.
Man.
And then my uncle passed away, my grandma passed away, and then we had a nephew that overdosed. And then we had another miscarriage in the pandemic. Man. So as a supernatural kid, that was like, we're going to pray, we're going to do all the stuff, we're going to go after it, God is going to answer, and I'm seeing miracles for other people. In the midst of all of that, I was a part of a ministry that was actually, it was led by a well-meaning theologian that was pretty brilliant in a lot of ways, but he was basically like a psychopath, and he was grooming women. And so we had to shut down this ministry, and it was like horrific. So I'm grieving all this loss. And at the same time, I'm keenly aware that within my culture and my friendship group is this horrific situation happening at a ministry school. And we had to do everything short of lighting ourselves on fire to get the circus to stop so that we could do the right thing. And so the grief of loss and death and my own personal relationship with Jesus being rocked, combined with such a disgust and a disdain for what my culture was doing to victims within the body of Christ.
Right.
I felt as if I had to divorce the culture. And I also felt lost in my own relationship with Christ.
Well, and this is, can I say something too? Like,
yeah, sure.
Please, like someone I hear all the things you just went through.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say, like, I'm so sorry. That is like,
oh yeah, bro.
That is wild, man. I knew all this going into the interview. Of course, we talked, so I knew all this. Yeah. But just to kind of re-acknowledge that, like, that's a tough blow to manage in a very short period of time. I would say that most people would say, like, how did you this may be a separate topic, but I'm just
Oh,
feeling to just land here for
sure,
a
man.
moment, and then I
Yeah.
want you to go
Yeah, it's about holiness too, so I can tie it
into
in
holy
for
name,
sure.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
talk about the difference between holy name and sleeping giant. But
Mhm.
I was just sharing on Sunday, for example, how one of the biggest challenges we have is to deal with bitter roots in our life,
Yeah.
and how in Scripture the Hebrew writer talks about this to guard your heart, to protect yourself against the
Bitterness.
poisonous root of bitterness, because it not only will defile you, it will defile many around you. And bitterness is like a thing that, I mean, you can feel on somebody when they've been
Yeah.
hurt by the church, they've been hurt by business, they've been hurt by friends or family, or gone through divorce. Like, you just feel their guard, you feel their jarredness, their I want to use the word like taintedness almost, because they haven't dealt with the bitterness. And I was talking about how in the like and I won't go into details, but I was away this last week, and how God showed me God pulling up this bitter root. It was a radish, actually, pulling it up, and on the leaves were like written words like politics and government and family and education. And
Yeah.
basically God was showing me, and I won't, like I said, go through the whole thing, but he was pointing at it and say, you have to deal with this, because you can't bless
Mm.
spheres of society if you have bitterness, because
Yeah.
bitterness is a blessing blocker. And if you want to actually see
Wow.
transformation in the music scene, in the church, and you got bitterness in your heart,
Yeah.
you're actually robbing those spheres of your ability to bless them because of your bitterness, because bitterness is a root that produces all kinds of evil fruit. And that doesn't only affect you, it affects
Other
others. It's like you've
people.
heard the
Oh.
term, or the line, bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's like, no, you're
Yeah. Yeah.
killing
Yeah.
yourself, and
Yeah.
eventually it's going to cause other people to be affected. So just really quick, I mean, give us a like, I just hear all that stuff,
Yeah, man.
and you must have really had to battle
Oh, yeah.
guarding your heart against bitterness in that season.
Yeah, I think in general, I did. I failed miserably. You gave me and Christy the word that you gave me, and her. We were sitting in the car. I was just crying, and I remember you just saying, like, dude, you're gonna get better. You're not gonna get bitter. You're gonna get better. You're not gonna get bitter. And I could feel the like directive of the Lord, like, don't get bitter. But I could also
Wow.
feel the like encouragement of like your target is that there's something for you guys that's meant to be
Wow.
good. So
Wow.
in general, I have to be honest with you. Man, I went to a meeting. I forgive me. It's gonna mess me up talking about it, but I went to a meeting and I told Eric, this is how, yeah. So I say this just for transparency, I guess. I went to a meeting to close a bunch of stuff down, and I took out an extra $100 bill and I had it in my wallet. And I told Eric, I was like, if I see that dude, he's got 5 minutes to get away from me. And if I have to buy his food, but it's like he doesn't get to be in my space, or I'm gonna beat him up in front of his family.
Wow.
Um, I was so I felt like God wasn't going to protect people, and God didn't protect people, and so it was on me. And I had all this deception and this anger going. Like I was
Wow.
so angry for so long.
Wow.
Um, it was just horrible. And so within 5 or 6 months of kind of going on a real personal sort of exploration with the Lord, I realized I had this huge chip on my shoulder about all these things,
Wow.
and it felt so, what the best way to say it is, like, it felt so ugly on the inside of me that I told Chrissy, um, I just want to go somewhere that's beautiful. Like I need beauty somehow because it's so ugly everywhere. And I'm full of just such ugliness. And I said, I just want to almost like sit wherever it's beautiful.
Wow.
And it was in that journey with the Lord where I was just like, I'll continue to press in, but I can't go because I'm pissed. Like I can only keep moving forward if you take me somewhere more beautiful um, than I've been, and
Wow.
I can only follow beauty. And I read a book by an amazing scholar and doctor. He leads at a school on the East Coast, but it's huge. So if anyone's into like a lot of head exploding your brain, the book is called The Ethics of Beauty. It's by Dr. Timothy Patitsas, but it's incredible because it's about how we acquire understanding. And in our culture, we're very big on truth first. but there's this formation within the Christian mind, especially within the more like Orthodox Christian mind, that if you start with beauty first, beauty will then lead to goodness, and goodness then leads to truth. And so the beauty first method of actually learning and seeing and putting the world together
Right.
is profound. And so I found
It's
myself,
kind of like starting your day off with gratitude. It's kind of like starting your day with Thanksgiving, being thankful about something.
yeah, well, it's just the fact that like, uh, I'll say it like this. We had a friend, and I won't do him the dishonor of saying who he was, but he went through a miscarriage with his wife as well. And he's a pretty prophetic guy. And he said, I came home and my wife was bleeding out on the floor in front of me. And I went to a hotel after, like, the next day or 2 days later, and I locked myself in the hotel and I said to the Lord, you're going to need to talk to me. And immediately it was like the voice of Jesus. And he said, I can tell you why this happened. It's going to mess
Wow.
me up, but why won't heal the pain?
Wow.
Do you want to talk?
Mm.
And so
Wow.
the why isn't it. And a lot of us try to start with like
True.
getting our whys answered. And the reality is that beauty and goodness, it's a higher understanding. It's almost a
Wow.
different way of, we know things different ways. And to know something by beauty and to know something by goodness, it almost trumps the mechanism that we're used to using to know
Yeah.
things. And so our knower stops here. And then there's this beauty realm that seems to sort of supersede everything that we've known. And I think that's partly why he says, mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy is a more beautiful way.
Mm.
And so judgment is true, but like for some reason, mercy will beat it. So I could be telling the truth about a situation and ready to beat a dude out of a restaurant, but mercy somehow is a more beautiful reality, and it's more true, longer.
Yeah.
And I have to like fix it a different way in my mind, especially as a person that's going to follow Christ, is like, I can't. Anyway, so that's what I say.
Wow.
So in that journey of HolyName, it was profoundly personal in that I was trying to understand. I was like trying to purge out a lot of really bad answers that I had. I was losing a false god. I was being healed of an idolatry that I had created. I was the best way to say it is, I was coming to the place where for years, for 5 years before any of this happened, probably 4 years, I had this song that would resonate in me all the time. And I would sing. I still haven't written it, but it's like I would sing to the Lord, if you come as the fire you are, burn everything.
Wow.
But if you come like the wind, I'll embrace the mystery. If you
Wow.
flow like the river of life, then just overflow all the death I see. But if you grieve alone in the garden, if you bleed alone in the garden, can I stay with you in the misery?
Wow.
But the chorus was, you can be yourself with me. Because that's what I'm after, is like, I want to know him.
Yeah.
And he just like rocked my whole world. And so in a lot of ways, I walked face first into this song I was singing. And it
Is
was
that one of
so,
the songs on the album?
no, I'm writing it now, but
Oh,
it's,
okay.
I'm saying I sang it as like a
Wow.
devotional. It was going on tape all the time. It was a directive. And then I walk into it and I'm like, not like that, not like that, not like that. And he broke through even my own religiosity and my own understanding and broke my like whole world apart. And what I said to a bunch of our prophetic friends that were around and stayed on me and Chris and just checked in was, I was like, I can't hear him.
Hmm.
And I can't feel anything. Like, I can't hear him. I can't feel him. I pray and like nothing. And I said, but I can see him everywhere. And I just knew what was going
Wow.
to happen. And so it was as if I was like in a bubble in the grief. I was in God, but he wasn't talking to me.
Now this was all in like the beginning phases of forming HolyName. Is that what
Yeah, it's
you're
like
saying?
2019
Okay.
into 2020 as the world's getting into lockdown.
And you weren't even planning to do this. Like this, you kind of. I feel
No,
like
we were
everybody
gonna
telling me
do.
you fell into it, kind of, right? By like,
Yeah, we have that community, the Rev community, which has been like this ministry we've been leading, and we have people from all over the place.
it's like a
And
network of like like-minded
yeah,
style metalheads, kind of, right?
yeah,
Like
dude, a
yeah,
bunch
yeah.
of hardcore kids that are church people, and so we planted some small home groups and churches and led Bible studies and just hung out. And been doing that for a while, and we wanted to do a worship record. And so we thought we were all going to get together to do a worship record. And then the whole world went into lockdown. And so I just said, why don't you guys record a song wherever you are? And then we'll do like a COVID mixtape of like where we were when all this was going
Awesome.
down. And so I called my homie Joe, who is my writing partner in HolyName, but he's one of the Rev leaders, and him and his wife live in Minnesota. And I said, hey man, I'm gonna send you a couple songs. Like, can we make one of our leader here in Salt Lake? His name was Aaron, is my brother-in-law. And I said, can we use one of Aaron's songs and make it heavy? And then I've got a couple old songs too, because people weren't sending in songs. And I was like, man, I really thought this was gonna go. The homies in England, in Birmingham, they have a band there at at the church that we've planted, and they wrote a really heavy worship song, super good. And then one of the other leaders wrote a song, but that was it. And so I was like, well, let's just kick it off. And so we took some of my old acoustic songs that I wrote by myself in like 2012 and 2014, and one of my brother-in-law's songs, which is one of my favorites. And when I was still in Sleeping Giant, I told Aaron, I'm going to steal this song from you and I'm going to put it on a Sleeping Giant record because I want everyone to hear it. And we just didn't have the budget or the time when we finally got in the studio when we did the last record. And so I didn't get to do it. And so I was like, Aaron, I told you I was going to take this song, man. And so the song is called Fall on Your Knees, and it's like incredible. So we made Fall on Your Knees heavy. And then I wrote a song in 2012 called Meet Me Somewhere Quiet, and Joe made that heavy. And then I had another song called My Way, and he made that heavy too. And then I had done a trap project with my friend Eddie out here, and the trap project was called Drug Train. And I said, can I sing worship on a Drug Train record? And he's like, not a Christian or anything. He's like, yeah, man, that'd be awesome. So he came over and I
That's
recorded
cool.
this song about one of the old saints. Her name was Saint Perpetua. And so I recorded this song called Perpetua with Eddie. It was a Drug Train track. And so I sent that to Joe too and said, you want to just make this heavy too? And so we ended up with a few songs. And again, the reason that I did that was I didn't know where I was anymore. And so I grabbed these old songs of intimacy and connection.
Wow.
And threw them out in front of me like a life jacket, because I just was like, I don't know how I'm going to stay alive, and I'm not interested in crapping on the church or Jesus, or it's no one's business. Like, this is profoundly personal, and it's terrifying, and it's not open for business. So I just was going through this thing, and only my close friends really knew what was going on with me. Because again, I'm also leading, like this this ministry and all this, all the like stuff. And I also know people are looking at me like someone that had faith. And so I wasn't trying to sign up to become just some, jaded poster boy of something, but I really
Right.
had the story of like, I need to go back to the beginning and find out what Christianity is about, or I've just been a hype man for a culture that I hate, and I'm not going to do that anymore. And so it was this journey of like, I got to really find out what I believe, and that's personal. But I also know faith, hope, and love, and I know him. And so I've got to keep trying. And so I threw these songs out and we made them heavy, and people really responded to them. And so then it got
Wow.
picked up, and it turned into
By
this
the same
project.
label too as like your last
Yeah.
band.
Yeah. JD, who was our old, he's the owner of Face Down Records. He called and
So
said, do you have any more of these? And I said, yeah, man. And so we just decided to do it, but I was done. I was totally done for
wow.
sure. So
I
it's a
just want
total,
to say something to you because
yeah.
and even for the people that are listening that maybe don't know you, but like, and I've known you for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
relatively a long time, anyways. And the one
Mm-hmm.
thing that I really admire about you and respect about you
Mm-hmm.
is that within your brokenness, you are able to not walk it alone in the sense of withhold what's really going on inside of you. Like you're really good at processing and sharing what's happening for
Mm-hmm.
you. And I think that's always I've noticed that about you since I've met you, and I've always appreciated that. Like you're one of the realest guys I know,
Oh,
in the let's say like the itinerant from that vantage point. And it's one thing to be raw and real in like the music scene on the stage, but for somebody who's also in like a vocational, and you've swam in those streams off and on, vocational
yeah.
itinerant ministry streams. It's like a lot of people in that space, like they feel too much fear to be raw and real with what they're going through,
Yeah.
or fear of losing platform or reputation. I mean, And because in reality, like it's been that way in the church, right? Like if you share too much, you're ousted. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
you can do all those things any other platform in society, and they're like, there's grace because no one expects you to be this like
Mm-hmm.
unhuman rock star
Mm-hmm.
in perfection, right? But everywhere else, it's like accepted that hey, you're all a bunch of mess ups. But in
Yeah.
the church, it's never really been accepted. But all to say is, I say this, I say, I'm
Mm.
thinking about, the 2 years ago, God spoke to me and said to me, don't trust leaders that haven't been broken.
Oh, wow.
Or don't build with leaders that haven't been broken. Don't trust them that haven't been broken. Because man, if you, when you go through stuff, it really is a revealer of the type of foundation you built your life on.
Oh,
Because the
wow.
pandemic, to me, like the pandemic, and I've said it a million times, like didn't make people go crazy. It exposed the crazy that was already there. When you go through hell, it's a
Mm.
revealer of the cracks in the foundation or the missing nails in the framework. Like it's a
Wow.
revealer. It's not something that causes, it's a revealer of what was already hidden. And
Mm.
so to see you go through this stuff, process the temptation to stay bitter, because we can feel bitter, but
Yeah.
God doesn't want us to stay there. Because if we stay there, it will defile not only us, but many of those
Exactly.
around us. And to see you go through all of this and come out on the other side,
Mm.
like it's a powerful testament, I guess. What I want to say, I just don't honor you, man. Just that
Oh, thanks, Sean.
there's a solid foundation in you.
Oh,
And
thanks,
I
man.
appreciate your willingness to share. So many people feel and have gone through what you're going through, but for
Yeah.
fear of being judged, they won't share it. They won't talk about it. So they look perfect on the outside. They got it all together, but then they're broken on the inside. They've never been able to process that out. So I just appreciate you for
Yeah.
that. So I would say this is like when I watched your live show on Veep or whatever it was it Veep or whatever it's
Beeps.
called?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Veep. And
Beeps.
when I watched that, I guess knowing what you had gone
Mm.
through
Yeah.
and knowing you as an individual, it felt to me like it was a real raw, almost offering to God. And
Yeah.
you said it as like a life jacket, like throwing a life jacket out and jumping in. Like it felt
Yeah.
like that to me. And I felt like God, like I felt the anointing on it. I felt like God on that concert that you put on Veep, but it felt different than Sleeping Giant to me. And that's why I was wondering, like in your mind, what the difference was,
Yeah. It's a totally different animal.
because you said let's write a worship album, but like I said earlier, like to me, Sleeping Giant was a form of worship for you too. So
Yeah. I think
what's
that's
really different about the
it's,
old worship of Sleeping Giant and the new worship of HolyName? Just
bro.
give me like
Yeah.
cold notes on that.
So SG in many ways was like, we're facing out, like it's about a mission out. And I think HolyName is about what was happening in me. And so
Wow.
it was
Okay.
more of like, I would say as an evangelist voice, I really tried hard not to point at them and go, that I was mostly just going, look at what he did in my life. This is what he did for me. This is what's happening for me. And then for people that were interested, they could respond, because I didn't want to be one of those voices. I don't think I am that voice. Even when I try to be, I suck at it. So it's mostly just like, this is what happened, but it was evangelistic and it was powerful in that way. This was very like, I'm like, I'm processing death. I'm trying to understand grief.
Wow.
I
So it's almost like a personal
It's
devotional
personal.
worship that
It's like,
turned
it's
into
literally
something.
like
Yeah.
personal art. Like
Yeah.
SG was like ministry go.
Right.
And this is like, I don't know what this is going to mean to anybody else, but this is what's happening for
Yeah.
me.
I see it, and this is, just correct me if I'm wrong. I see it as like it's like your journal entry that goes viral. Like it was just meant for you, and now it's gone viral, and everyone knows your personal journal.
Yeah. They're like, all right, what is it? So then I'm like, all right, well, here it is. Cause my speed is like, right. Especially Brene Brown people. It's like, the only way I can do this is like, I'll give you all the ammo that you need to totally destroy me. Please don't, like, I can't, like,
Right.
I have no other option here. Like,
Right.
but I'm not trying, but because I wasn't trying to say, I only wrote one song that was actually like anger, only one. And it's an interlude, and that's about sexual abuse, and it's about leaders that hurt people. And it's about the words of Christ that if you call him the rock, but then you lie and you hurt people, he will become the millstone around your neck, man. You will sink if you hurt his people.
Wow.
That's about as mad as I got, because that was also part of the journey. Most of it was just like,
Right.
I'm heartbroken and
Well,
I'm
that
sad.
sounds to me a little bit like righteous anger. I mean, it's like
Well,
flipping the tables.
I would hope so, but you
I mean, you
never
could.
know. I mean, there's so much pride and ego and vanity lurking everywhere that it's
Right.
like,
No, I get it.
I just don't trust I don't trust anything anymore. But
Right.
when it's like, oh yeah, I'm so righteous. Like, dude, yeah. If you could have seen what I told Chris, I'm like, dude, I've been preaching for like 15, 16 years, 17 years, planting churches. I proclaimed the gospel on the Mount of Olives in Israel when they were throwing rocks and blah, blah. And you know what? When all this stuff went down, I felt like, dude, I've been doing all this stuff out there and I don't feel holy at all. Like, I don't know if any of it made its way in here.
Right.
And I gotta stop because I'm so good at the verses from the Song of Solomon. You know, my brothers, they made me keepers of the vineyard, but my own vineyard I have not kept.
Right.
I was just aware of how barren and bitter and poison I felt. I was so not righteous that I was like,
Right.
oh my God. Like,
Well, I think just to clarify, I mean, we know this. Like, of course, you are righteous. You just weren't feeling it like you were because of
well,
the stuff that was coming at you. I mean,
I mean,
let's just
okay,
like
fine. Listen, I'm just want to say I got you though, but that's like that's
I
the
totally get it.
that's the difference with Holy Name versus Sleeping Giant is in many ways Holy Name I'm gonna share it because
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
who
yeah.
I am, but
Right.
it's
So
way more personal. It's way more almost creative or artistic
okay,
than
so tell me this. I mean, and this wasn't necessarily where we were gonna go with this chat, but this is okay right
sure.
now. Tell me this. So you've always been this is a supernatural leadership podcast. You to me model that. I mean, you have family,
Mm-hmm.
you have you were a church planner, you had you kind of oversee sort of a network of
Mm-hmm.
like-minded individuals. You're a businessman, you're getting into acting,
Mm-hmm.
you got all this stuff, and knowing you behind the scenes, you've always let that supernatural side of you represent. Like, you've never been
Mm-hmm.
someone that like hides the light under a shade, like you've always been just who you are. Even like, can I sing worship on this Drug Train album? Like, you've always just been who you are. I love that about you. I think everyone who knows you loves that about you. And that's really the mission. That's what supernatural leaders are. They're not just supernatural leaders in specific environments where it's accepted, like, i.e., for the most part, the church, the body of Christ. Like, you are that everywhere you go.
Oh.
So how do you see that part of your leadership sort of representing in this new season of HolyName different, or maybe the same as Sleeping Giant? Because now you're getting shows. I mean, you're on like this fest, what is it, Furnace Fest or something in Alabama with bands I thought were like dead. Like, I didn't even know the guys were still alive. I thought
Yes.
it was a joke
Yes.
when I saw the names on the poster. I'm like, there's no way
Yeah.
this band is playing the show. Like, this is a joke. Like, even some friends that I showed it to, it's like, no, that's a joke. That's not real. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, it's
It's a
real.
real fest for sure.
It's
It's
real.
wild.
So now you're with a label, your previous label. Obviously, there's going to be like, I don't know, I'm going to make an assumption, some sort of expectation that, hey, you're going to do some stuff.
Sure.
So how do you see your leadership in this new season with HolyName? Similar or different?
Hmm.
Now that you actually have to do some stuff, like, no longer is it just about your journal, as your journal's gone viral.
Mm-hmm.
You're in these environments with non-believing in Jesus, non-Christian, maybe bands. So what is your mission then at that point? Like, how do you see your leadership representing in those environments in this new season moving forward?
Well, there's a certain part of the playbook I think that is always going to be the same. I wrote it down, 1 Thessalonians 2:8. And it's what I don't think anything changes in like that respect, in that like the point of when I get on stage in front of people, um, what the Apostle Paul says is, we cared for you. We loved you so much. We were delighted not only to share the gospel with you, but our very lives. And so I think in front of people, I have the blessing of just saying, this is just what I've been going through. And I think that's the beauty of our culture, is that we're bound together and we're drawn together by story. And we share memories with one another. It's like a different version of table sharing or something. It's like we get to have these experiences together. And in that, there's communion and there's community and there's a sense of connection. And so I think what's cool about what we've done is now I get to show up, and as opposed to trying to make it anything, I just get to be myself, which is very helpful. And I hope that's like my message to most people, is like, just be yourself. But I would say too, the thing that I've been working on the most has been, I have a couple of mentors, and they would just say, just keep your eyes on your own plate. And for me, I think I would say one of the biggest and most impactful sort of encouragements that I have, and the heart posture that I think everyone should be aware of, is one of humility. Like Luke, or I think it's Luke 18. It's Luke 18. The Lord says, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. And in general, what I'm saying is I want to connect that to the idea that he says, if you look for place and position, you're going to get sent down. If you're just willing to be there, the point would be for HolyName, and it's what I hope happens every day, is like, it'd be really awesome. It'd be really cool to experience him beckon me a little closer. Like, I think that would be really nice. I think the areas of my heart that are still, I don't fully trust, I'm scared to get hurt again. I don't know if he's really, I almost feel like I'm still walking it out. And I know that he's the solution and he's the medicine, but I don't know what to do. And so I think in that space of like, I would love for him to go, why don't you come closer to me? That would be nice. Like for him to empower me to even do the thing that he's asking me to do would be pretty cool. So I would just say that for many people, what I thought would be cool for any leader to hear is that, humility. I believe, and what I was shown in 2018, I was training for the crazy run across Utah that we did for Run Against Traffic. And I had to train a lot. It was a huge run. And so I had to run miles and miles and miles and miles by myself. And I was running. And my brother had passed away a few months earlier. And I'm crying as I'm on this like running trail. And I looked, and there's all this unmowed summer grass, and it was just wild. It was not neat or tidy. It was definitely hood. It was like kind of sketchy, but it looked really beautiful moving in the wind. And I remember stopping and looking at this grass and just feeling really like I didn't know what was real anymore. And I watched the wind move this grass. And inside me, there's this turmoil around the death of my brother. We've just had our first miscarriage. That's new. I have no idea what's happening with life. I'm trying to do the right thing. Why does it feel like everything is breaking out against me when I've set my intention to try to do something good for the world? Why is this hitting me? I'm trying to make a difference, and now everything's getting harder. Like, what the heck is going on? And I'm in this turmoil. And then I look and I see the grass just moving in this wind, and I'm crying and I'm thinking of my brother. And so I just stopped in the middle of this running trail, and I'm crying, and I just said, I can do that. Just lifted my hands up, and I'm standing in the middle of this running trail, just like crying awesome. And like kind of swaying, and people are like riding their bikes by. Like I look like such a moron, like so stupid. Awesome. I'm like, someone's dad is standing in the middle of this running trail, just crying,
with your hands
crying, up. Just, yeah. But I'm just mimicking, like, just move with creation, man. Just let it go. And as that's happening, I can feel something, and I begin jogging again. And when I get done with my run that day, it was as if what I felt communicated to me was that if I would have stayed on that trajectory of the anger, the frustration, the tension inside, I was on a path that was imperceptible to me. and along it was just demons. Like it would
Wow.
have been not good.
Would have taken you
And
out. Yeah.
one small moment of like, God help, it like pop, like straightened my path out. But
Wow.
then he also jumped me into the future.
Wow.
Like humility itself, one
Wow.
humble moment, I'm stuck in the consequences of my life. I'm stuck in the tension of financial pressure or like managerial pressure or like staff problems or relational issues or like parenting problems and like lack and frustration and anguish. And I'm stuck in this moment and like, God help, boom, all of a sudden now spiritually, I just felt like not only did he protect me from a path I didn't know, but he jumped me into the future. He like fast forwarded my progress
Wow.
spiritually. And so I was
Wow.
like, wow, how did that happen? And he reminded me of the verse that says, if you're patient, if you let patience do its thing, you'll be
Wow.
mature, you'll be complete, and you'll lack nothing. And that's not because you're
Awesome.
older and you're stronger and you have more money. It's because you're patient. And he's like, yo, humility is the superpower. And I was
Wow.
like, what? And he goes, if you are humble, you can jump through time. And I was
Wow.
like, that's wild. Cause I just felt like he saved my life. Like that'd be the best way to say it. I don't know why, but wherever I was mentally, I don't know if there was a new addiction that would have been birthed in my life. I don't know if there would have
Wow.
been frustration in my relationship to Chrissy. I don't know
Wow.
if my kid, I'd start hitting my kids because I get all frustrated. I don't know what's on that road, but it was like, that was not leading me a good place.
Wow.
And it was like, boom, like one moment of like, God help. And he shifted me imperceptibly to anyone else in the world.
Wow.
And it was like I felt the power of
Yeah.
one humble moment. And so in Christianity,
Wow.
what people need to understand is, as it pertains to like actual Christians, since like the dawn of time, they actually call like they call humility uh um the mother of all virtues.
Mm.
Like humility is the cornerstone.
Yeah.
When you think about it, why? Because it is like one of the only ways that we are crazy Christ-like
Yeah.
when
It's
we
surrender. It's obedience.
choose.
It's all those things. Yeah.
It's without
Good.
humility, you can't say yes, you can't say no, you don't. It's like
Yeah.
it's so crazy to think about. So I just, for a lot of people, they're out to make different business decisions. They're trying to make different leadership choices. They think that the answer is in some kind of an acquisition of some new thing. And I would just submit to everyone. I think that you would do well to practice moments, like daily moments of humility
Amazing.
in your practice of following Christ each day. And I would just coin it as, please practice the spiritual gift of I don't know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know we got to cut for time here. I'd like to do a part two with you
Okay.
because I want to unravel this. I feel like we just hit something
Okay.
at the end of this, and I want to unravel this a little more for everyone listening on this
Okay.
humility piece. But what I do feel that's connected before we close here is this piece you said about your friend asking uh clarity for this miscarriage. He was in the hotel room. And I always say this, like God never answers the why question, he always answers the what. Like, what are you doing? What are you gonna do in this? Like, what's happening
Wow.
in me? What's gonna happen? Those around me? How can I grow from this? Well, I think
Yeah.
humility really is the definition. The definition of humility really is obedience and surrender. Like when you surrender in obedience to God, you are humbling yourself in the process. The fact that you stopped,
Yeah.
acknowledge that, hey, God is still bigger than all
Mm-hmm.
your problems. It
Yeah.
was like the spiritual chiropractic shift you needed, like the spinal adjustment you needed to
Bro.
align your body properly to move in the right direction rather than the wrong direction. It just so happened while you were running, because the race, the spiritual life that we're called to live and do is a race. It's a run. And on that run, we can go down the right road or the wrong road. And you were almost on the run, metaphorically speaking, going to go down the wrong road in bitterness.
Dude, I
But
can
God
feel it.
stopped you. He got your attention,
Yep.
in the weeds,
Yep.
in the ungroomed grass, which is obviously usually kind of what we all feel like. We feel like we're ungroomed grass at times. He got your attention,
Yeah.
little spiritual interpretation here.
Come
And
on,
he
bro. Just roll
adjusted
with it,
you.
bro.
Yeah, and
I'll
he
just give you,
adjusted you.
tell me when you're ready and I'll go, ho! It'll be good. Just keep going. It's tight.
So, anyways, all that to say is that for those listening, I just want to encourage everyone listening in this season. You might relate to Tommy's story. You
Please.
might feel similar feelings that has had felt from all the loss. Loss is a game changer for our lives. It can either make us bitter or make us better. And I want to encourage everyone out there to ask the question, God, what are you going to do? What are you doing? Forget the why question. Ask, what are you doing? And how can I see you better in this season of loss? And we're going to dive in part 2. We're going to dive into this. We're going to unravel this. I'm forcing Tommy to come back onto my podcast
It's
so we can
fine, dude.
unravel this humility piece to hear your storyline on how you got through it all. Because now we just hit sort of like where you started. I
Yeah,
want to
let's
hear
do
like
that.
how it's
That's cool.
unraveled, and we'll continue to talk about HolyName and all the how that all fits in. But Tommy, I know we got to go for time. Thank you so much for coming on. How do they get in touch with what you're doing?
Oh yeah.
How do they
Hey,
find your band? Like
yeah,
what do they do?
you can look up HolyName everywhere. So
Is it
holy,
one word, 2 words?
one word, HolyName,
That's
which
the
is
key. One word.
one word, HolyName. And then I would say, please, if anyone anywhere has any interest in helping us in fundraising for aftercare and for all the counter trafficking space with Run Against Traffic, please go to irunagainsttraffic.com and
Awesome.
support. We've got crazy projects coming. I'd love to talk about that on the next one. And I think it'll
Yes.
be fun.
We'll
So
do that. Hey,
thank you
we're getting you
guys.
back
Thank
on.
you, Sean.
Unravel this part 2 coming your way. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to the Supernatural Leadership Podcast. Tommy, I love you, appreciate you, and we'll talk again. And for all those listening, don't forget to write, review, rate. It means the world to us. Even if it's on YouTube, do it all. We appreciate it so much. Let us know your feedback. And remember, everybody has a leader within. So let's make that leader a little more supernatural. Until next time.